So anybody want to share any comments about their practice this week? Darcy?
For really one of the first times after trying to meditate, I actually feel I had a moment where my mind let go. And it was an amazing feeling that interrupted the feeling of letting go. Because I even just felt it sort of, I don't know, just like that.
So how did you know that the mind had let go?
Well, that was the problem. I mean, the second you realize, then, I mean, like, you try to have, like, it was a different feeling than I've ever had.
Yeah.
It was as
We
if,
just guessed.
you know, the gray of that stone with the circle, and how it has a little bit of texture, that just, like, okay, so sky, and I was thinking about opening my heart, and it was, I don't know, it was just really different. I had a moment that was really let go. But then it was back. But
were you sitting when you were meditating?
yes, I was.
Yeah. You say that you were trying to open your heart?
I was purposely meditating, taking the time to allow space for meditation, and purposely using our exercises from last week, looking at the sky without seeing the clouds and giving them names, and without seeing the birds and giving them names.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was looking into the sky, but not, you know, at it in a different way. And then I had the thought about opening our hearts, as we discussed. And sort of to me, when you said it last week, it was like this and this. And then I just had a moment where it felt like it was a different feeling. I don't know how else to explain it because it wasn't a word feeling.
Yeah.
It was really good. So I think that I'm back. You know, the meditation practices are helpful.
So let me say something about your phrase opening the heart. Because I don't agree with it.
I was just going to make
Yeah, just.
Steve's
So when is the sun out?
All the time,
When do we think it's out?
during the day.
And not only during the day, but what type of day?
Sunny day.
So,
Well, I just
so,
don't think that way, so no, I don't think
right? So people think it's only out in the daytime and only on the days that it's not cloudy.
yes.
But
It's got other
the sun
things.
is out all the time. So are the stars. But when it's cloudy, we don't notice them. And during the daytime, we never consider the stars. In fact, our language tells us now they're out, or here they come. Or the moon is rising, but it's not. You know, it's coming into awareness. So is the sun. We're going out of awareness. Perhaps when it sets, it doesn't have to go out of awareness, but it often does. So the heart is like that. I think the heart is open.
All the what?
Huh?
It's all what?
open.
It's open. It's state. Right? But when our language says we close the heart or close somebody off or, you know, all that kind of stuff, it isn't the heart, it's just the blinds on the window or the armor or whatever the metaphor is. So if you say, I'm going to open my heart, I don't agree. You can break down the armor and open up the posture and open up the mind to the idea, etc., etc. But it's all stuff between the heart and something else, right? So it's defenses or habits or postures or moods or personalities or whatever they are, prejudices or whatever it is between the heart and wherever it's open to. So I don't even feel like the heart has like the sun doesn't know anything about rising.
Right.
But we think it must be really good at it. It does it every day. But the sun doesn't rise. Right? It's our perspective that gives us that language. It's seems to rise for sure, right? But I would say that the heart doesn't know anything about opening,
Mm-hmm.
because to know about opening is to know about closing, and the heart doesn't. The heart is an open thing, or space, or energy, or field, or whatever the right term is. So it's not even this thing that opens. It's openness. And then, for a variety of reasons, language, culture, habit, personality, hurt, we occlude it and armor it and forget it, but don't look towards it like we don't look at the stars in the daytime, that sort of thing. But it is open. Alright. So the meditation we're doing is creating space for that thing to happen. Right? And maybe we'll do a little standing, we'll see how it goes today, maybe we'll do a little standing meditation that I do that's sort of to help tune that in. Anybody else share anything about their practice this week? Garrett?
I tried meditating with, I did it down by a river, river-ish.
In a van?
Yeah, and, wait, what is it?
Funny.
Anyway,
Before
down
his
by the
time.
river, and I was sitting on a rock, like, in the middle of the river, and I
Yeah.
was just, like, sitting on it, lotus, and then halfway through, it started bothering me about, like, my posture, and I started to say, like, it's not what I'm doing right now, maybe so.
Nice.
But then I decided, well, let me try putting my legs in the water.
Mhm.
So when I did that, it could be
So
just
like
me.
your thighs are on the rock,
Yeah,
and
just
your
kind of like
feet or
letting
calves,
them
yeah,
hang
yeah,
into
yeah.
the water,
Nice.
and the stream was kind of running, and that maybe it was just me kind of like tricking myself, but it helped me tremendously for
Yeah.
some reason, because like there was like this other element. It was really hot that day too, so like it was like cooling, and I just like as soon as I put it in, I just got way calmer. And then like just the motion of the river helped as well.
Yeah.
Could be just me, but
A pleasant distraction.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like I kind of equate it to like when I go to bed, I always turn the fan on, not even for the feel, but like for like the sound. It's kind of like a pleasant distraction, kind of. So it kind of like that could be similar. I don't know, like the running water.
Mm.
Yeah.
One of my teachers, he taught me 3, maybe 2 meditations. You think I'd know? Like that's a small number, I should know. But one of them, I'm not sure if it's meditation or it's a worldview, but I don't know. But at any rate, the primary one that he's sort of really taught as a meditation was about the idea of holding 2 differing ideas in the mind at the same instant. So not going from one to the other so that you think you're looking at them at the same time, but actually holding 2 things in the mind at once. And that frisson that comes from that is the meditation. Like if you can break, kind of his words, if you can break the mind or the mind's pattern in a way that it can hold 2 ideas at the same moment,
Opposing ideas?
Or he didn't say oppose.
2 different things.
So it would be
2
just
different
2 things.
Yeah, but he meant the way you're meaning with oppose, just without all of the meaning of oppose. So he meant, fat and thin, rich and poor, light and dark.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
That's what he meant, and those are the examples he used.
Right.
But our minds don't accept them in as 2 different categories, and then we try and resolve the categories, and maybe bring the 2 categories very next to each other. So if I sit back here, I see them as a pair, but I still see 2 things. And you get to this point where, this frisson, like, oh, I have a non-dual awareness of duality, which is like crazy big. And so when you're talking about the river, one of the really cool things about that is that in a physical way, you're on a rock, which still solid, unmoving, surrounded by liquid moving, and you literally have a foot in each, you know, if you will, right? And like that's a pretty cool thing in the sort of physical way to have that, a similar thing to what he taught us meditation of, wow, like I'm perfectly dry and still and solid, but I'm in a river.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's an interesting dynamic to experience at the same time. And probably your mind went from one to the next. Like, oh, I'm on a rock, it's really nice. But now your mind is thinking about the river going by, and then it comes back to the rock, still dry, got splashed down a little, whatever. But it's a nice dynamic to set up, you know, as a meditation. Interestingly, I did a similar meditation Monday, I think. No, maybe I don't remember. Yeah, Monday, on a rock by a stream on the farm, you know, and I was doing it with this great blue heron. We're both like, you know, 12 steps away from each other, and I was having a similar experience, but the rock is kind of beside the river, but it kind of feels like it's in it, the way, you know, it kind of comes up. And it was really like a really, really cool thing. You know, I was like seeking stillness, and the train was moving, but trying to be as still in its, because it's hunting, as still as it could be in movement. And I was trying to find the inner workings within my stillness, and we were kind of sharing the very same spot. So it's kind of
That's cool.
kind of a cool experience.
What was the word you said when the two thoughts weren't separate anymore?
Frisson, Frisson. And since it's French, we'll have Ethan define it, since he's our resident.
It's one of your favorite words.
It is.
Should I underline
I italicize it.
Yeah, that's
Or
I
put
tried.
a little beret on it. Whatever, I think.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, you're good.
it? Okay, I'm ready.
I can help with the pronunciation there, I think. Help with the definition.
I'll believe it. I mean, just tell me.
Because it's a loan word.
A what?
It's a loan word.
Alone word?
It's a French word that we use in the English language. Directly.
Oh, we're
Just a
Bible.
little bit, yeah.
Like rendezvous.
Yeah, I know what that means.
Yeah.
But see, for frisson, I'm thinking, but it's wrong.
It does, well, the thing is, it has a certain je ne sais quoi, so it's a really hard.
That's what I meant to say. The je ne sais, but that's
That's good.
French, and
I just got that.
What the French call a certain I don't know what.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you guys can,
All right, so
you
I'm
can
just gonna
explore
put it in a
where-
box.
You can explore it during the homework phase if you like. But to me, it's a really, there's not a better word that I know in our language, so that's just the word that
So
for
you're
so many
borrowing
things is
it
the right
from-
thing.
Extra
Yeah.
credit for next week to come back with a frisson like built from your massage practice.
Yes.
Alright, I'm coming up with croissant, fusion, all these.
Waffle. I would never order a croissant.
Croissant?
If they call them a croissant, I don't want it. If they, oh, would you like one of our croissants? Yes.
You want to go?
If you call it that,
Really good.
I'm in. Yeah. Dunkin' Donuts is like a crescent roll.
Crescent roll.
Yeah, I was like, oh, no, I don't want that. Yeah, good. You were gonna
Yeah.
say,
If I can go back to that meditation you were talking about holding two different ideas in your mind at the same time.
Frisson.
Is it seeing them as a whole? That's the meditation. Is like not as a whole. Okay, that's why I was.
no, it's not seeing them as a whole. You're not transmuting them. You are seeing two things that are two things at once, not back and forth. Here's the mistake people do. People say, peanut butter jelly, 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 and then, oh, there's a way to look at them as a thing, which is a set, or another thing, a PBJ sandwich.
Right.
And now I look at a sandwich, which I know is made of two things, but that's not looking at two things at once. That's looking at a new set.
I see what you mean.
So a set is fine, that's what we do, but it's not looking at two things at once. So this is looking at two things at once. It's observing and interrogating duality from non-duality. So it's not simply observing, but you're kind of like, what is it made of, and how is it shaped, and is it ticklish, or like, you know what I mean? Like with the mind, you're investigating this thing, not just, oh, yeah, I see it.
I love that.
And that frisson is the only way I can, like, something else comes from that. Yeah, which, you know, it's a tough one, it's a heavy duty one. I'm not teaching it now. So
No.
you can have these notes, and if we ever get to it, that's fine.
Good, I'm glad you mentioned
Yeah,
that.
that's
It
a
seems
really
hard.
tough one, you know.
It's interesting.
Yeah, but,
This is gonna help us not get too distracted by too many things, gotta train our minds to see everything as just a non-separated collection, maybe, to help simplify.
you don't agree with the first half. The second half I was about to agree until you finished.
Don't feel bad, that's pretty good, actually.
So the second half was to help us see things as they really are, being one, that sort of thing. If you start with the presupposition of what the experiment is gonna bear out to be, then you're not quite doing the practice. So I'd far prefer to do the practice. And then we'll talk about, hey, and then it might be, hey, I did see things as they are. But if I tell it, oh, here's the results of the experiment I'm going to do, and then run it, that's not quite what I'm going for. Because to see things as one, and to start that practice with the idea that you're going to learn to see them as one, means that you're starting with the idea that there's two ways they can be. And you're trying to do this thing that helps you get to the one. The first part of what you said was that we're something along the lines of we're going to learn to get better at benefit, something like that, you know, whatever your specifics were, which I've just forgotten now. But sure, maybe. I didn't promise that. And that may be true. That sounds like what you'd read in a brochure about meditation, so it probably does happen. But I'm not saying you're going to do this and get. Yeah, we'll see. You know, we'll see. It's a healthy process. The fruits are the things you guys get to tell me about. If I tell you that I'm selling something, don't want to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if we're out sometime having a beer, just talking, and I'm not in teacher mode, yeah, I'll tell you, hey, here's this cool thing that happened, and I really believe this should kick in for you. Like, because then it's a different mode. I'm not like teaching. Do you see what I mean? So I'm very hesitant to be a salesperson because I know I'm in a teacher mode, right? So I don't want to say, here's the thing that'll happen.
You can turn that over.
Well, you guys can share that with each other. Here's what happens. And that's one of the things I want to do when we start this. Like, so what happened with your class? What happened with your practice? And that's good support and bouncing back. Okay? Anybody else? Who practiced how much this week?
Practice a couple times, twice,
Two times during the week.
2 separate times. Yeah.
And what was the duration of each practice? Ish.
Very short,
Just ish.
3 minutes.
Okay.
I was with them by the river. I have no idea how long we were
I
there.
have no idea how long we were out
We were
here
just
for.
sitting there.
That was one time, and then I did 2 other times for about 20 minutes each for those. I remember that because it was more like a I'm trying to go to sleep type thing. So I did that third eye thing.
Okay.
wasn't the most successful. Because I didn't go in there with the intention like I'm going to meditate tonight.
Right.
You know?
So, Jen, Ethan, Darcy, Greg, Sarah, I'm not going to ask you for an answer to this, but did you feel what happened in your brain when Darcy said 3 minutes twice and then he said 20 minutes twice? Did you feel what happened in your brain? Like,
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
like when you hear those, you probably immediately have a sense of, oh,
Comparison.
yeah,
I'm not
comparison.
competitive.
I'm not asking you to say what happened or didn't happen. I'm just saying if it happened, then it's very likely there's no value to that comparison. But it tends to happen. So,
I have no idea.
Raj, just once this week in the river? Greg?
0.
0? Now you can kick in the judgment. That's what we're holding it for. We're saving it and reserving it.
There was one lesson that I got from you. It's that more is better.
Yeah, I repeat it all the time.
It's like a mantra. Man.
It doesn't matter if you do it well.
The only place that belongs is on a coffee mug. It's just, anywhere else, it doesn't. Sarah?
I can't define. So I'm having a hard time. I meditate at night when I go outside with the dog. I do stuff when I'm making tea. It's like I can go in and out of that.
How many times this week?
It's more like how often do they have a conversation where I'm actually present is a totally different thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm still looking for an ish.
Maybe-ish.
Yeah, okay. Like once a day ish? Yeah.
Or so.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't even.
I didn't intentionally practice, but I felt a lot of anger this week. Like I wake up angry.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the end of the day, I'm like, maybe if I close my lip, like, oh, like Steve said to do,
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Or I think I just want to hold my breath. No, I'm supposed to breathe in.
Right.
So it's more, no intentional meditation.
So you were kind of being reminded of why you want to be meditating.
Yeah,
Right.
because
Right.
I'm like, nothing works to get rid of this anger.
Right.
Oh, but I'm taking that meditation class. Maybe it would help
If you do it.
if I do it.
Yeah.
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 Like, but
No,
I'm not.
but so,
I'm not
like,
there. Like,
So
I'm,
that's not what we want to hear. Like Greg said, he didn't practice, but it is it's having it relate to you the reason that you're doing meditation and like trying to commit to it. You know what I mean? So like there's an upside there where it's like I am doing this thing that's supposed to help with it. So there's like
Right.
it's like the beginning stages of like a practice.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. So
I know what'll help me will make a difference in how many time for it. I'm so busy.
I don't know why you're here.
how about you?
About 3+ times a day. Usually minute to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Longest is about 3 hours.
3 hours?
And mostly sitting.
Mostly.
I'm guessing with any like
Yeah.
mostly sitting. Anyway.
Mostly sitting.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Sometimes
So
lying down.
the more important than the duration is consistency. If you haven't had any consistency, that's the thing to work towards. And if you haven't had any practice, then that's the thing to work towards. And if you haven't had any intention, then that's the thing to work towards. And if you don't have any let's say belief in the possibility of this, then that's something to work towards, which is probably not my favorite word to use there, but maybe if you don't have any estimation that it should be a healthy thing. So that's the sort of process that I see you guys all carefully wrote down. So we'll see that in the homework notes, but that sort of process kind of tells you what you want to be shifting towards. Where you are on that list tells you what the next thing to. None of those are become an arhat or do it in a certain position or go to a week-long silent meditation. None of them are that. They're just on the process towards consistent practice. None of them mention the duration of the practice or what the practice is. It's just moving towards consistent practice.
Is there any time of day that's recommended?
Yes.
Or times of day?
The correct answer is the one that you give me after you're consistent. And then you tell me, Steve, I figured out for me,
Fill in the blank.
right after I eat, or right before bed, or right after I brush my teeth before a shower, or I don't know, whatever it is. And the way you figure that out is you try it at different times. And then once you figure out what, what I'd say is sort of temporarily figure out what you think is a good time, then you test that in different contexts, like tax season, when you're on vacation, when you're sick, right? When your in-laws are with you for the week. Just like different, because we don't all just have the same week every week. You have different seasons, different modes. Like you might just figure it out, you think, in August, and then it's amazing. And then ski season, oh right, I forgot. Every other weekend we go skiing and there's this whole thing. And now you lose your practice. So I wouldn't, if you said to me from August to December, every day, right before lunch, I get this great 7 minutes, and I've never missed, and I'd be like, great, interesting, you're not at the point of a consistent discipline practice. Because we'll see, when you're on vacation, and we'll see when you lose your job, and we'll see when your car's broken down, we'll see, when you have a new baby, we'll see, or whatever, all the different things then we'll see. And it's only after you have a discipline that has developed into a consistent practice that I would agree to call it a practice. Before that, you're learning to have a practice, and the learning has a bunch of failures. You think you're fine, and then all of a sudden, you have to travel this week, and or whatever happens, or you're waking up angry this week, and that's a little challenge to it, and we'll fail, and that's fine. And we already spoke a little bit about the failure in a small sense, but that same lesson applies to this grander sense, the strategic sense. Okay? So, practice. Yeah, let's tend to our posture.